My brother got me fired, then asked me to lend him money weeks later. Imagine dedicating 5 years of your life to a job, climbing the ladder slowly, earning respect, only to have it all torn down by your own brother. And just when I thought the betrayal couldn't cut deeper, he came to me, with his hand out, asking for help. Let me tell you how blood really isn't always thicker than water. For 5 years, I poured everything I had into my job at a mid-sized tech company. I wasn't some genius developer or a hotshot executive. I was the person behind the scenes. I handled logistics, kept projects on track, and made sure deadlines were met. I wasn't flashy, but I was reliable. The kind of person bosses trusted to quietly keep things together when chaos erupted. My hard work finally paid off when my manager hinted I was next in line for a project lead role. It wasn't a huge jump in title, but the pay bump would be enough for me to finally move out of my shared apartment and get my own space. I was thrilled. I called my brother, Ryan, to share the news. Ryan and I used to be close. At least that's what I thought. He was 2 years younger, always a bit of a wild card, bouncing between jobs, trying out side hustles, never really landing anywhere solid. I'd helped him out more than once, covering rent, paying off part of his car insurance, even letting him crash on my couch for a few weeks that somehow turned into months. But I never really minded. He was my brother. So when he sounded genuinely proud of me over the phone, I felt warm inside. "That's amazing, man," he said. "You deserve it. Maybe you can help me out with a little something once the raise kicks in, yeah?" I laughed, not thinking much of it. I figured it was one of his jokes. Ryan always joked about money, how broke he was, how the world owed him more than he got. I never saw the bitterness behind those laughs until later. What I didn't know then was that Ryan had just lost another job. He didn't tell me. And apparently, he had a plan, one that would use me as the safety net. Again, about 2 weeks before I was supposed to start leading the new project, my company launched a collaboration with an external startup, a team we were supposed to onboard quickly for a joint product. We were shorthanded, and in a weak moment of loyalty, I suggested Ryan for a temporary position. It was basic admin work, data entry, running errands, and helping the onboarding process move faster. I even vouched for him. My manager was skeptical, but because of my record, they gave him a chance. I trained him myself. I told him, "This is important. Please, just treat this seriously. This could be good for you." He nodded like he understood. For a few days, everything seemed fine. He showed up on time, dressed decently, asked questions. I even started to feel proud, like maybe this was his turning point. But that feeling didn't last. One afternoon, I got pulled into a closed-door meeting with HR. They looked grave. One of them slid a printed email across the table. "Do you know anything about this?" It was a forwarded message, with my name forged at the bottom, leaking confidential product specs to a third-party recruiter. Attached was a resume. Ryan's resume. My stomach dropped. I didn't understand. It was my work email, but I hadn't sent anything. Then I realized Ryan had used my company laptop to check something real quick earlier that week while I was in the break room. My world spun. I tried to explain, but how do you prove what didn't happen? It was my name, my email. There was no digital trace tying it to Ryan. I was placed on administrative leave while they investigated further. I didn't even get the promotion. I didn't get a chance to clear my name. Instead, I got a polite email 3 days later. "Your contract has been terminated due to breach of confidentiality. You're no longer permitted on the premises." And Ryan? He didn't even call to ask how I was. The days after I got fired felt like free falling into a dark pit with no bottom. One minute, I was prepping for a promotion, finally getting some recognition, and the next, I was blacklisted in my industry, branded as someone who'd leaked sensitive information. I didn't even know how to tell my friends, or my roommate, or my parents. I just shut down. The worst part wasn't the loss of income or the blow to my career, though both were devastating. It was the betrayal, the gut-deep, bone-deep betrayal of someone you trusted so completely you couldn't even imagine them doing something like this. Ryan didn't call, didn't text, didn't reach out in any way. I wasn't even sure he knew I'd been fired. But deep down, I suspected he did. Maybe that's why he went silent. At first, I held on to the hope that it was all some kind of mix-up, that he'd come forward, that he'd admit what he did, apologize, and help me clear my name. But weeks passed. Nothing. I tried emailing the company, even offered to let them search every personal device I owned. I begged for another chance to explain. Their replies were cold, corporate, and final. My roommate picked up extra shifts to help cover rent while I scrambled to find part-time work. I ended up delivering groceries, swallowing my pride every time I stepped onto a porch with a bag full of items I used to buy without thinking. I kept telling myself it wasn't forever, that I'd bounce back, that somehow karma would catch up to Ryan. And then, 3.5 weeks after I lost my job, on a gray, rainy Tuesday, I heard a knock at the door. It was him. Ryan stood there in his usual disheveled hoodie, water dripping from his sleeves, holding a plastic bag of takeout like this was some casual visit. I stared at him, stunned. "Hey," he said, like we'd just spoken yesterday. "You busy?" I didn't answer. I stepped aside and let him in, mostly because I was too exhausted to argue. He dropped the takeout on the table and plopped down on my couch like nothing had happened. "So, you got any beer?" he asked. I blinked. "Ryan," I said slowly, "do you know what happened to me?" He looked at me like I was the one being dramatic. "Yeah, I heard. That sucks, man. But that wasn't my fault." My jaw clenched. "Not your fault." He shrugged. "Look, I might have used your email to send my resume out, but I didn't think it'd be a big deal. I needed references, and you weren't helping." I stared at him, numb. He was admitting it, but with zero guilt, zero remorse. "You got me fired, Ryan." He waved his hand like I was being unreasonable. "They were just looking for someone to blame. If your company was worth anything, they'd have done a better investigation. Don't pin that on me." I couldn't breathe. My chest ached with rage, confusion, grief. But he wasn't done. He leaned forward, suddenly serious. "Actually, that's why I'm here. I need a little help." I laughed. Out loud. It just slipped out, sharp and bitter. He winced. "It's just for rent. I'm late a couple weeks. You know how it is." I stared at him in disbelief. "You think I'm going to give you money after what you did?" Ryan frowned. "Dude, I'm your brother." My voice shook. "Exactly." He stood up, offended. "Wow, I come here like a man, ask for help, and you act like I killed your dog. You're being selfish." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was selfish? He stormed out after that, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frame. And I just stood there in the silence, wondering when exactly my brother had turned into a stranger. After Ryan left that night, I sat in the dim glow of my apartment for hours, replaying everything, every word, every shrug, every ounce of indifference on his face. I kept asking myself the same question. How'd we get here? Growing up, Ryan and I had our fair share of sibling fights. He was the golden boy, charismatic, athletic, always the center of attention. I was quieter, more reserved. I studied. I listened. I kept things together. Our parents never made it a secret who they favored. Ryan could miss curfew, crash Dad's car, lie about school, and still get dessert. I brought home straight A's and barely got a good job. It hurt, but I accepted it. That's just how things were. I figured one day, as adults, we'd even out. That respect would finally be mutual. But that night, watching my own brother walk out after casually destroying my livelihood, then calling me selfish for not handing him money, I realized something chilling. Ryan had never seen me as an equal. Not as a brother, not as a friend, just as someone convenient, someone useful. And when I was no longer useful, I was disposable. The following week, I tried to focus on surviving. I picked up more shifts delivering food, sold some old electronics, and applied for literally any job that paid above minimum wage. But something inside me had shifted, a quiet, seething fire that wouldn't die down. I didn't just want to move on anymore. I wanted accountability. So I reached out to a former coworker, someone I trusted, and asked if they remembered anything weird about the day of the breach. To my surprise, she'd always found the evidence shaky. She admitted HR had rushed the process and barely let me speak in my own defense. I decided to take a risk. I compiled every bit of correspondence I had, screenshots of text messages where Ryan joked about helping me out, timestamps of his access to my laptop. He used to borrow it often, and even the forwarded resume from the company he'd applied to, sent from my email. Then I contacted an employment attorney. I didn't have much money, But the lawyer agreed to review the case and advise me pro bono. He said, "I've seen families do worse to each other. Let's see if we can fix this." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control again. But then came the twist I didn't expect. One Saturday morning, my mom called. Her voice was chipper, almost forced. "We're having a little family dinner next weekend," she said. "You should come. Ryan will be there too." I hesitated. "I don't think that's a good idea, Mom." She sighed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. He told us his side of the story. You know he didn't mean to get you fired." I was stunned. "So he did admit it?" "He said it was a misunderstanding, and that you've been holding a grudge," she replied quickly. "Anyway, he's still family. You don't turn your back on family." I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. That was it. That was the moment I realized no one was coming to stand up for me. Not even my own parents. I was alone in this. So I did what I had to do. I sent one final message to Ryan. "Since you refused to take responsibility privately, I'm handling it legally. I've submitted evidence to clear my name. You might want to get a lawyer." His reply came hours later. Just 2 words. "You serious?" Yes, I was serious. The day I officially filed my claim was oddly quiet. There was no thunder in the sky, no dramatic music playing, just the sterile click of a computer mouse and a simple confirmation email from my attorney. "Complaint submitted. We'll let the company and their counsel respond. Hold tight." But even though the world outside looked the same, my entire life was about to split in two. I didn't tell anyone in the family right away. I needed to be strategic. Ryan had already painted me as the unstable, bitter brother who couldn't let things go. If I was going to fight back, I needed to be airtight, logical, and painfully calm. A week after submitting the complaint, my lawyer received an email from my former employer's legal department. The tone? Defensive. Confused. They hadn't expected this to escalate. Suddenly, they were asking for a meeting to clarify misunderstandings. When we met over Zoom, I laid everything out. The unauthorized access logs. The email sent to the other company from my account. The text between Ryan and me, where he smugly referred to finally getting his shot. One of the HR reps on the call visibly paled. Another shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "We weren't made aware of these messages," one said. I kept my voice steady because no one asked. You just believed what you were told. It was like watching dominoes fall. Within a few days, they officially reversed the termination in writing, while stopping short of an apology. I didn't care. I had the letter. I had proof. But I wasn't done. I forwarded the legal notice to Ryan. Not because I wanted revenge. Not anymore. I just wanted him to know I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. That's when the real chaos started. My phone rang nonstop, first from Ryan, then my mom, then my dad. I ignored them all. Finally, my mom left a voicemail. Her voice was frantic. "How could you do this to your own brother? Do you know how embarrassed he is? He might lose his job too. This is tearing the family apart." I couldn't help but laugh. Tearing the family apart? As if it hadn't already been torn the second they all chose to look the other way. Ryan finally texted me. Long, dramatic, guilt-laden. "You're seriously going to ruin my life over one mistake? You're acting like I murdered someone." One mistake? He sabotaged my career. Gaslit me. Let me spiral for weeks. Then asked for money. I typed back, slowly and deliberately. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday, not destroying their livelihood. Actions have consequences, Ryan. Then came the final blow. At another family dinner I didn't attend, Ryan broke down. According to my cousin, who secretly recorded it and sent it to me, he told everyone he might have gone too far, but that he was just trying to get ahead. He even tried to cry. My brother, the actor. My father's voice cut through the audio. "Cold. Tired. You crossed the line, son. And you don't even sound sorry." It was the first time I'd ever heard my father speak to Ryan like that. The tables were turning. Slowly. Painfully. But turning. By the end of the month, my name was cleared. I received a small settlement from my former employer, and I landed a new role at a better company. And Ryan? He got put on probation at work for misuse of confidential information. A warning shot. His career wasn't over, but it was cracked. And suddenly, the golden boy wasn't so shiny anymore. It was a Sunday afternoon when Ryan showed up at my door. No warning, no call, just a knock, sharp, urgent, and impatient. I debated not answering. Honestly, part of me hoped he'd just go away. But deep down, I knew this moment had to happen. So I opened the door. There he was, my brother, standing there with his hands in his jacket pockets, eyes down like a school kid about to get scolded. "Hey," he muttered. I said nothing, just stepped aside. He walked in like he still had some right to be there, like we were just going to sit down, drink coffee, and forget everything that had happened. He sat on the edge of the couch, tapping his foot nervously. I stayed standing. I wanted the imbalance to be obvious. I wasn't giving him comfort. I wasn't giving him power. He finally spoke. "Look, I know I messed up." I raised an eyebrow. "Messed up? That's what you call it." He sighed. "Okay, I screwed up. Badly. I got caught up in trying to get ahead, and I made some decisions I'm not proud of. Still no apology. Just abstract regret. No ownership." I crossed my arms. "You didn't just screw up, Ryan. You hacked into my email. You sent a fake message that cost me my job. You let me spiral, question my sanity, and then had the audacity to ask for money. That's not screwing up. That's calculated betrayal." He looked down, ashamed, maybe for the first time. "Maybe. I was desperate," he said quietly. "You always seemed like you had everything together. Everyone praised you, compared me to you. I just wanted to be seen. For once." I blinked. That old excuse again. "So your solution was to burn down my life to make yours look better?" He didn't answer. It was a long silence. You could have cut the tension in the room with a knife. Then he finally looked at me. "I'm sorry." And for the first time, I actually believed he meant it. Not because it was perfectly timed or dramatic, but because his voice cracked just a little. The bravado was gone. The smugness, the arrogance, it had all been stripped away. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was just Ryan, my brother. Flawed, pathetic, human. And still, I couldn't say I forgive you. Not yet. I said, "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, but I'm not going to hold on to this forever. For my own sake." He nodded. "Fair." Then he got up and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned to me one last time. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll consider it." I didn't reply. I closed the door behind him. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. The silence was deafening, but peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt like I could actually exhale. Ryan may have tried to destroy my life, but in the end, I rebuilt it stronger, on my own terms. And that was the real victory.